Welcome to this week's edition of the Construction CPA's Coffee Cafe. I am the Construction CPA, Lisa Raish. We are dropping the hammer on cash flow problems so you can build things that matter. This week's topic is the power of job costing, why guessing really is not a strategy. We, as you know, we're here pretty much every Friday to go over different topics, typically in the construction industry. And so job costing is an incredibly important thing to take care of in your construction business. So we do talk about this topic a lot, and so I just want to make sure that we kind of hit it home that how important that it is, and you want to make sure that you are actually keeping track of your jobs, and that's really the most important thing. And guessing at them doesn't help you. It definitely doesn't help you be profitable. So, kind of, what is job costing? And we talk about that a lot. It's really you're just tracking all of the costs that are associated with a specific project or a job. That's going to be your labor. That's going to be your materials, the subs that you're using if you're using any, and then any overhead allocation that you have. It's different than your general bookkeeping because job costing can be very, very granular, right? You're digging into costs associated with each and every project. It's not just all of the costs that associated with subcontractors or all your labor costs or all of your materials. It's each and every project that you're working on. So it's individual to that project. Again, as bookkeeping gives you that overall picture, you're going to get a more granular picture of the jobs, the specific jobs when you're doing job costing. So again, job costing is you're taking your actual expenses, actual team members, if you have actual team members working for you, the costs associated with them. Let's just say you work on a specific project over a week. All of the payroll associated with that, payroll taxes. Did you have subs come in on that project? Clearly, you probably had materials. So, what did you spend on materials? And aggregating all of that together to see exactly what you spent on that project versus saying, oh, that project cost me X. So, you want to actually track the information versus guessing as to what the actual costs were, because you're going to need that actual information not only to rate the jobs that you have, but also to look at how you're bidding on any or quoting on any subsequent jobs. Because if you're seeing a pattern of there being expenses, overruns, or even on, even not spending as much, right? In most cases, you end up spending more. But if you do, those are things that speak to how you're going to adjust your bidding or your quoting moving forward. So again, having actual information versus guessing doesn't actually help you hit the profitability that you're looking to hit. So what's going to go into your job costing, right? So we've got our four main categories. So we've got our labor, we have materials, subcontractors, and then our overhead allocation. So again, what does that mean? So labor, you're going to have your direct labor. Those are going to be the people who are directly working on your projects, right? That is the laborer on your project. That is the project manager on your project. And then you're going to have your indirect labor. There are going to be people who, for example, in your office, who may be working indirectly on the projects to help you, again, to track the information, to do certain things for you. So you're going to have two different types of labor. You're going to have your direct labor and then your indirect labor. You want to track those hours and you want to track them accurately. So if you have laborers, you want to track the hours that they're actually at a job instead of just saying, oh, well, we spent X hours there. No, how many hours did each and every laborer that you have spend on that actual job? So tracking their hours, not only hours per day, but also hours and where those hours are located. And then you want to be able to code those hours to a specific job in their timesheet so that the costs associated with those hours can in fact be allocated directly back to the job, which is what we're talking about when we're saying you want to allocate your labor. Next are going to be your materials. These are going to be the purchase orders for all the materials you're buying, any deliveries, anything like that that you're having sent directly to the location, any costs associated with delivering them, etc. Those your materials. You want to keep your receipts. We find far too often that clients lose the receipts. The purchases are undocumented, especially the small ones, the quick ones that they run out for, the quick run to the local Home Depot or the local hardware store. Those are the ones that tend to get lost. The larger ones that come from the major material suppliers, typically, most clients find that a lot of these larger businesses have portals. You can go and pull out your documentation, but you want to keep track of the smaller ones, the receipts that you get, but you also want to keep track of when you have things delivered, and you want to match it up to what was actually ordered so that you ensure that you've actually received what you're paying for. You're going to have subcontractors. There's going to be people that you're on hire out to do specific parts of projects for you. Your team may not do the entire project. So you're going to want to track what you're paying them. What is the scope of the work that they're doing? Are they meeting the requirements of that scope? You want to make sure that all of that is clear and clearly tracked. And then you want to ensure that any of those costs are in fact tied to a job. So in most cases, if, for example, you have an electrician come out, they're going to be working on project A. And then if they come out another time, then they might be working on project B. You want to track the cost associated with that sub, in the example, that plumber, back to that project. So you actually tie it back to a specific job. And then there's always going to be an overhead allocation. And so, what is your total overhead? These are all of the costs to kind of operate your business. This is going to be your rent. These are going to be the team members that you have working in your offices, all of the office related operational expenses, insurances, right? There's an allocation of those total costs that you spend on an annual basis, which you want to allocate back to the job so that you're getting a true and accurate picture. Because without the general operations, a lot of these projects will still happen. You'll still have your costs directly associated with the project, but you want to allocate the costs that are accompanied by the operational team that helps run kind of the back office or the back end of your business. You want to make sure that you're really keeping track of these consistently so that you have a very accurate picture of what you're actually spending on these projects. So there are some tools that you could potentially use, different systems and things like that. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. So there are job cost reports in most accounting softwares. Some softwares do them better than others. What we have found is that most clients are utilizing some type of job costing product outside of the accounting system, and they're adding it in with for example, most of our clients are on QuickBooks. Again, it's not the only product out there. It just happens to be the one that most of our clients are on. So, for example, there are things like products, job costing products like Builder Trend, Co-Construct, Job Tread. So there's a number of different, again, there's tons of them. So that's just a scratching of the surface. If you're in a specialty industry, there may be something specialty for, electricians or plumbers so again, you want to find a job costing system that works for you, but though you want to look at those products and see what features they have to ensure that you can track your budget. You track your budget by line item. And then when you're allocating your cost back to your project, you can in fact track it back to the line item to determine whether or not you're over or under budgeted on a specific line item. So again, the recommendation here is to use an automated tool in order to do your job costing. They'll have more robust reporting than doing something manually. But again, that does also require a level of training from your team, but it'll help you to get better reporting. But you want to look at the features that they have, what works for you, what doesn't work for you, and really vet out the best product for you because there are tons of products on the market. You can also track on a spreadsheet. A lot of clients start out this way, especially when they start small. It's a lot easier to start small and track in an Excel sheet or a Google sheet, whatever works for you. What I would say is a lot of times the Excel sheet only lasts so long. And if you're growing and you're growing quickly, that may in fact not be a good fit for you in the long term. But it doesn't have to be elaborate. It can be very simple. You just need basic columns. You're going to need a job name, the category of what it is, labor, materials, etc., the date it was purchased, the vendor it came from, the amount, and any notes you might want to have on that particular purchase, right? Something you might need to know. As I mentioned, it doesn't have to be elaborate. A spreadsheet will get you there. The larger your business gets, the spreadsheet may, in fact, not be the best route to go. And you might be looking at a more automated job costing tool, like we just mentioned. You're also going to want to track your time, especially if you have team members internally that are working on these projects. You're going to want to be able to track not only the hours they've worked totally on a weekly basis, but what projects have they worked on so that you can allocate those costs back to those specific projects. There are tons of digital systems out there. What used to be T-Sheets is, I think, called QuickBooks Time now. That's an option. A lot of the payroll services have time clocks associated with them. So there are a ton of different products out there. If you are using an automated job costing system, there may in fact be a time tracking tool in there. Some of the more kind of job cost sophisticated payroll services will have, again, those clocks in there where you can keep track of not only their total time, but what projects they're working on. So again, using some sort of automated time tracking tool to help you track totally the time and then the total dollars associated with that so that you can mark them back to the appropriate jobs. So how are you going to use these reports? Because now you've got them, right? You've put all of this information together. Maybe you just started off and you're just in an Excel spreadsheet. What are you doing with these things? So first, you want to compare what your estimate was, what your bid was, your quote was. What did you think you were going to spend against what you actually spent? Do you have line items that were over or under? Why were they over? Why were they under? Those are the things that you want to be looking at. So you want to be able to compare your estimate to your actual costs. And when you've identified overruns, if you have any, where have they happened? Why have they happened? What's going on? Is there something you may find after 2, 3, 4, 5 jobs? You may see that you have historically a specific line item that actually has overrun. So maybe moving forward, you're going to need to rethink how you do your quoting and your bids and your estimates moving forward because something in your general assumptions has changed. Again, you need that historical data, that actual information to bid on new projects, right? To make them more accurate, to make them profitable, to spot any patterns that you might see. Are you seeing that one part of a specific type of project historically has overruns? If it does, what needs to change in your thought process moving forward? And then, as always, all of this ultimately leads to and helps you be more profitable on these projects. Is there a place where you can cut out any unnecessary costs? Where are you wasting money? Are there places that you see that you've wasted money historically over a number of projects, over a number of months? Can you cut that out to improve your profitability? Is there an ability to also improve your overall efficiency with your team members? How many hours that they're spending on projects or on certain portions of projects? Do you consistently have overruns on specific portions of projects with your team? Is there an opportunity to potentially train them so that they are better at that one specific task and therefore don't lose or gain all additional time, which cuts into your profitability? So again, these are all things that you're going to use to learn from and potentially make any, adjustments in your business. So there are going to be some common mistakes that we see people run into pretty regularly. First thing is they're not tracking their costs in real time as they're coming in, right? Sometimes clients wait until they actually pay them. And that, in fact, is going to skew your numbers at certain points. So you may have payment terms on certain things that you've purchased, maybe on your materials. Maybe you have a 30 or 45-day payment term. You're going to want to make sure you track it when you've incurred it at that, when they deliver it. Versus, oh, well, I have 45 days to pay, so I track the cost 45 days later. At that point now, where your costs may actually be out of whack or skewed, and isn't giving you an accurate picture of your project. So again, you want to track the costs in real time when you have in fact incurred them. A lot of people, they fail to include their indirect costs. So the indirect costs are going to be those office expenses, the insurance, right? It costs money for all of the insurances that you have on those projects. You have trucks at those projects, right? Those are all indirect costs associated with actually servicing those projects. So you want to allocate them and include them in not only your actuals, but have them included in your estimates as you move forward. Some people do not actually review their job costing on a regular basis. You want to, depending on the type of project, especially a long-term project, you want to be reviewing your costs on a monthly basis. Those are things that you need to be looking at. If a project is going to go on 5, 6, 7 months, you want to know in month 2 if you're having an issue with overruns. You don't want to get to the end of a project where you can't potentially make some adjustments to it. So again, you want to be reviewing your costs on a regular basis. And some people really use that kind of gut instinct, that guess versus the actual data. And sometimes that can be skewed. Your own personal experiences skew what your thought on a project is, when in actuality, a project could be a loss for you. You may not, you may feel in your gut you're making money, but that may not in fact be correct. So you want to have the actual data, real actual data to make comparatives against. So, what should you do today, right? What can you do today if you're not doing some of these things or all of these things? First, the first thing you want to do is choose a system. Are you going to do it manually in a spreadsheet, or are you going to use some sort of software-based system? If you're going to use a software-based system, you want to do some research and determine which one might be the best one for you. Not all are one size fits all, and there are tons of tools out there. Look at or identify what are the jobs that you're working on today. What jobs do you have open today? And if it's in an Excel spreadsheet, start tracking those expenses in that project right now so that you know what you're spending in that one particular project. You want to make sure you set up basic cost categories. It does not have to be an elaborate cost system with 100 categories, but you want to have at the minimum the high level, right? The labor, the materials, the subcontractors, and your indirect allocation at the minimum. You'll probably want more categorization based on your business because there'll be things that you'll want to look at. But on a high, like you need those. Those are your basics. If you are not tracking your hours by job, start tracking your hours by job this week or on Monday, right? Start tracking not only how many hours your team members are out for the day, but where did they go to all one project? Did they go to a couple of projects? If they did, what hours were they at each one, and keep track of those hours based on the project that they're at. And then with anything else, you need to commit on a weekly basis at the least to reviewing these job cost reports, allocating and, compiling all this information together and looking at it so that you can in fact catch any trends, whether it be a downward trend or even a positive trend. You want to be able to catch those as they're, as you see them, so that if it is, say, a negative trend, you have the ability to make an adjustment and make an improvement before, say, a project ends. As always, we love to see you here every week. If you have any questions, please drop them in the chat. We'll always get back to you, trying to answer whatever questions that you may have. We look forward to seeing you here every week, and we'll see you next Friday. Have a great day.